Happy St. Patrick's Day and welcome to the Newburyport Maritime Society 2022 annual meeting. Could you change the slide, Jack? As Jim welcomes us in tonight on our agenda. Next slide. Joan Whitlow, our executive director, will review the plans and timelines of the front door refurbishment and the rear door replacement, as well as introduce you to the new exhibit that's launching April 2nd, Legendary Newburyporters, and other programs that she has that waiting for us. After Joan, Mike Loreno, our treasurer, reports on the financial health of the organization, followed by Doug Muir, our clerk, who will conduct the election of the new board of directors officers. And finally, Jack Santos, our incoming chair, will guide us into 2022, sorry. Next slide. But before we go to 2022, oh wait, we need to go back and see what we did in 2021. It's all about where we've been and now where we're going. So 2021 began where 2020 ended, with the country being in the midst of COVID. But there was a vaccine on the horizon, so we had hope. And in 2021, the museum remained open and on a regular schedule. The store was open for business, docents provided tours, life around the museum was upbeat, active, but cautious. COVID impacted where programs were held, and we were thankful we had a lawn that we could use as well as share with others. Next slide. First Fridays were outside on the lawn. A couple of topics we heard were the shipwrecks of the North Shore, as well as the history and refurbishment of our own Milliken clock. In the fall, First Fridays came back inside, and we learned about Abraham Wheelwright, and the Newburyport Marine Society came to life under Jack Santos. We were fascinated to hear about the celestial navigation equipment we had in our collection, and Kate Gilbert brought her one-woman adaptation to the inside for the holidays. In 2021, the lawn and the gardens were very busy with music concerts. Next slide, Jen. Music concerts, weddings, parties, fundraisers, senators, Rybacki Awards, yoga classes, dance classes. We shared our resources with local businesses, nonprofits such as the Firehouse, Yankee Homecoming, Horticultural, Garden Club, Art Association, just to name a few. We, next slide. We said a sad farewell to our beautiful fourth order Fresnel lens as she returned home to the Popham Light, where she was shined up and repaired and is looking beautiful. And if you want to, you can visit. They have tours now. In 2021, we hosted fundraisers. We saw the return of Maritime Days. Sadly, no ship, but we launched a new trivia fundraiser. We had a treasure hunt of local historic sites, as well as an all hands appreciation party. The second annual Maritime Tree was a beacon of light and sound. I think you'll see it on the next slide. It brought much joy while providing a platform for many nonprofits. The Custom House and Maritime Tree took part of the Greater Newburyport Chamber 3 invitational nights. The first night we had hundreds come to see the tree light up and to hear the Newburyport Choral Society. The PTO had the second invitational night, while the Salvation Army had the third. Both raised funds and awareness with music and song. Over 16 other nonprofits participated in the Maritime Tree. But that's not all we did. Due to COVID, our strategic plan was pushed to 2021. And after many months of meetings and wonderful motivation speakers, such as Suzanne Dubois, ED of the Jeannie Geiger Center, Tim Felter, VP of the Newburyport Bank, Sean Gallagher of Newburyport Superintendent of Schools, Sean Reardon, Newburyport Mayor, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. 2021 was engaging and fun and collaborative, and we hope you were able to enjoy it. But all these wonderful events just didn't happen. It was due to the hard work and dedicated and amazing Custom House Maritime team that made it happen. The staff, especially Joan Whitlow, the board of directors, who I'm honored to have worked with these past 2 years, the volunteers who worked programs, tours, and collections, donors, sponsors who funded us, the entire Custom House Maritime teams were rock stars this year. So as I end my term as chair, I want to thank all of you for giving me your trust and support. And 2022 is going to be a great year. The new leadership guided by Jack Santos, I know that 2022 is going to be awesome. So let me introduce to you Joan Whitlow, our executive director.
Thank you, Susan. Next slide, and I don't see the slide, so I'm just going to keep hoping that I'm on the right one. Last year's efforts were to restore the basement windows to stabilize the building's environment. The annual appeal in 2020 raised funds to address the external doors. Longtime supporters and dedicated volunteers, Tom and Alice Gould, along with several CHMM members, donated funds which helped our request to the city for the Community Preservation Commission grant. And of course, Dan Healy's gracious contribution last summer will help to complete the project. The oak doors from the 1872 renovation will be restored. If anyone has been in the front vestibule, you can see the light and feel the cold air through the cracks. The intent is to remove the doors early April and build a temporary enclosure with an operational door. Weather stripping and new period hardware will help to secure the building. After a fresh coat of paint, the doors will return before Memorial Day in time for the tourist season. Next slide, Jack, please. The rear door replacement are another project, but similar, just because there's more involved. The removal of that metal commercial doors that you see to the upper corner will be replaced by more appropriate period doors in the drawing, inspired by other Robert Mills custom houses. You can see from the photo in the right that there is more. There's electrical, there's plumbing, and thankfully the fire department emergency key box. This will all need to be relocated with new lighting and signage. This will be a relatively shorter flip, but it will also involve more of the historian architect Greg Colling and the general contractor C2MG. More importantly is the flood shield, the aluminum panel that should prevent water infiltration from rising waters with any storm surge. This panel will be the same height as the basement window sills and will be dropped into place when needed. Next slide, Jack. By now, many have seen the banner or postcard mailing for the legendary Newburyporters exhibition. This is not your typical history or art installation. Yes, it is an artist conceptualization of 14 individuals from the 18th and 19th century, but also 14 different people today telling you why these individuals are important either nationally or globally. The labeling is intended to provide quick facts, but one can dive deeper into more information on the wall panels. There are 2 videos, one capturing the casting technique for Timothy Palmer, and the other an overview of the exhibition so we can make this more accessible on our Custom House Maritime Museum YouTube channel. Funding for the exhibition video was generously provided by Mr. and Mrs. Charles Griffin. Marge and Skip Moats, Newburyport's extraordinaires, with a passion for history, managed 14 different historians, then edited all that was produced into an accompanying publication, Legendary Newburyporters, sculpture by Jeffrey Briggs, a chronicle of achievement in 18th and 19th centuries. The book will be on sale in the museum store with 3 other products we've developed specifically for the exhibition. All of this is possible by the generous support of our presenting sponsor, the H. Patterson Hale Jr. Charitable Trust, and our major sponsor, the Newburyport Bank. In addition, citizen sponsorship provided the opportunity for others to support the exhibition or individual sculptures at 3 levels, and their contributions are reflected in the book, pedestal, or wall panels. We wish also to thank all of the historian writers who made this exhibition a reality in supporting Jeff Briggs' aspiration in making Newburyport aware of its legendary citizens. The exhibition opens April 2nd and runs through the end of 2023 to provide maximum time to engage the schools and provide programming. Next slide, Jack, please. We also have a new exhibition in the stairwell of John Sheedy, contemporary art, dormant vessels along the waterfront. John is a local artist, mainly known for his marsh landscapes, but these boats docked on dry land for winter captured his eye. The collections gallery has a slight makeover, introducing more items from the collection and expanding the stories to include currency, the architecture, and the history of the Customs House. There is more to tell to the Customs Service and Newburyport collectors. Coming from the MIT Museum, I had to get some of the navigational instruments out into the galleries. A few important navigational instruments with a few rarities of the Newburyport Marine Society collection. So you'll have to come and see for yourself in the coming weeks. But sometimes exhibitions is a result of a gift or a bequest. The painting on the right is a new acquisition of a ship after it barely survived a whirlwind in 1873. Captained by George Spalding, a Newburyport Marine Society member, who later recorded his life voyages, documented this event. We believe he commissioned Liverpool artist William Howard York to paint the Anahuac, the ship that survived and was later towed to port. The painting descended in one family and was recently gifted by his great-granddaughter, Ellen Grant, to the museum. Next slide, Jack. Once a museum receives objects in the collections, it is our fiduciary responsibility to care and preserve them. Jeanette Isabella understood this all too well, and years ago set up a conservation fund for paintings. Currently, the ship of the Montana, bequeathed by Helen Marvin, is at the Northeast Conservation Center in York, Maine, for conservation and will return later this summer. The artist William Gay York is actually the father of the other well-known artist in the previous slide. So it's kind of neat. Father, son, both Liverpool artists, kind of cool. Then you have the portrait of Captain William Nichols in the original frame with reverse painted matte and gilded oval edging. Dr. William Freeman and his wife Juliet Loring provided funds to preserve the object by reframing with archival materials. This object was believed to be a pastel on paper attributed to Charles Delin, port painter of Maastricht and Amsterdam. I probably didn't pronounce that right, but excuse me, and painted sometime after the War of 1812. In making the preliminary investigation for the scope of work, it was discovered that the paper is actually calfskin. And on the reverse is a manuscript written in Dutch. The lead preparator at the Northeast Conservation Center was kind to share these images, which remind us all that there are still discoveries to be made in the collection at the Customs House Maritime Museum. In addition to the volunteers, board, docents, committee chairs, and members, I want to acknowledge the staffing. Maureen Wolf, after 5 years, will be leaving the museum May 1st to be with her family in Connecticut. She has graciously agreed to stay on and help Janice Drake transition into her new role as store manager. Brianna Marshall had been the Customs House Maritime Museum grant writer for recent years, but she's accepted another position. So we're searching for a new replacement. You will be seeing more of Diara Torres, the executive assistant, in the coming weeks as we move from our virtual programs into the physical realm. Dee started at the end of January and is full-time. Grant Bellino and sister Jasmine Bellino tend to the visitor side of the house, while Marilyn Roberts manages the volunteers, docents, and membership. Me? Well, I started to let people know that my time is almost expired, at least as executive director. Many know that I took my early retirement from MIT, thinking I could be of help to a smaller museum. My commitment of 3 years is coming to an end this summer, and the executive committee has begun the search. Thanks to all for the kind words, and I will stay on with the transition, for the transition. It's been a great opportunity and privilege to serve as executive director. With that, I'd like to introduce Mike Loreno, treasurer, and I think that's the next slide, Jack.
I think Mike may be on mute. Oh, there we go. Go ahead, Mike, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Not a problem. Hi, everyone. So with that, let's jump right into the first slide. Okay. So from a fiscal standpoint, the 2021 highlights were that revenue exceeded budget by 148,000, which is fairly remarkable for us. And following right behind it, operating profit exceeded the budget by 52,000. I'm going to talk a little bit more on our way that we budgeted and when we talk about 2022, because we've been pretty consistent the last couple of years. But let me jump to a couple other points. For those who recall, in 2020, we received PPP round 1. We'd spent that, and that was subsequently forgiven. In last year, 2021, we received round 2, spent that, and that subsequently was also forgiven. That was a big help to us. There was about 27,000, if memory serves correct. The endowment grew by 39,000, and on that, there were no contributions made to the endowment last year. That was 100% of that was just investment gains. And that's important to note. In contrast, the building fund increased by 105,000. That the majority of that was due to the receipt of a reimbursement for the roof repairs and redo that we did largely back in 2020. So about 101,000 was from that. And then the balance was due to the fact that late last year, we moved the cash for the building fund into an invested portfolio. So previously it was sitting entirely in cash. So we moved it late in the year. It took a couple of months to get everything invested, just the kind of the way that timing works with our custodian. But that yielded another roughly 4% gain as well. The great thing is that at the current level, so the building fund as of December 31st was at 162,000, which puts it ahead of plan, a full 6 years ahead of the plan that we committed to when we took control of the building. So we're way down the road. And also, I think the plan called for a 12% gain, or a $12,000 contribution annually. We're getting to the point where the market, getting pretty close to the point where the market may just provide that money, or for certainly most of it. But even if you only grew the endowment by a couple percentage points, by the time we catch up, this should be fully funded by the market. No guarantees, but that's an amazing fact that I don't think anyone was prepared for. Next slide, please. Okay. In terms of more specifics on budgets, I want to talk about 2020. 2020, we took the tact in March, right as things were starting to shut. In fact, just before the shutdown took place, we decided to do a rebudget. we had a typical budget presented, and that typical meaning it was based on prior years in a normal environment. We recognized pretty quickly that we would have to change our outlook, and because it was very clear that we had no idea, and nor did anyone else, what was going to happen. So we went about coming up with a critical spend budget, is what we called it. And by critical spend, that meant that we were only. My dog's getting very excited. Apologies. One second, I'm sorry.
He's obviously as crazy about finances as you are, Mike.
Clearly, this stuff puts most people to sleep, but she's impassioned by it. So, okay. So we took the path. We took a look and said, what do we have to spend money on this year? And that was our expenses. And then we took a best guess as to what revenue might be. And you can see, based on the performance in 2020, we actually were pretty darn close. We beat our expectation on revenue a little bit. On the expense side, we spent more, and we did that on purpose. After putting the budget together, said, at that point now we were shut down. And so we decided to take advantage as soon as we could and start sprucing up and renovating the inside of the museum. So expenses exceeded the budget, which is why we had a little bit more of a loss than we budgeted, but revenue was pretty much spot on. Now in 2021, we took more or less the same approach. It was a pretty conservative approach from a budgetary standpoint, and you can see what happened. We absolutely blew away the budget. So going back to my point before, I was about $148,000 over budget in terms of revenue, which was pretty amazing. We did ramp up spending a little bit, but much of that spending is actually going to be reimbursed. So that bottom line would, if you lined up the grants that we applied for, if you lined up the receipt of those with the financials, that bottom line and top line would both go up even further. So with 2022, we took a slightly different approach. And the one thing I want to point out before we go to the next slide is you'll notice that 2022 revenue is slightly lower than 2021. That's owing to one thing and one thing only. We removed PPP round 2 revenue from the 2022 budget, and otherwise we matched it exactly in terms of revenue. Next slide, please, Jack. So regarding the approach for 2022, this is not a term, this is not a phrase that the board used when we were coming up with the budget, but this is what I'm calling it. It's an investment year, and I think this is the best way to think about it. So we're targeting roughly a break-even bottom line, but it's higher spending and slightly lower revenue. And a couple of the things Joan mentioned earlier, for one thing, we're looking to spend more money on a grant writer. And obviously we have expectations of an ROI associated with that, but a return is going to take some time. So it is an investment. Also, the admin that we hired to keep everything going at the museum, Dee, who Joan mentioned, that's also a bit of an investment as we're increasing payroll. So those are two key things. And we mentioned the doors project earlier as well. That's another one. But even with all that, with higher spending and slightly lower revenue, otherwise there was more or less, the process that we took was more or less consistent with what we did in 2021. And one key thing to point out, this is a living budget. We did not include events at all for this year. That doesn't mean we're not going to have any, and that doesn't mean we expect to have any. It's just that we don't have any on the calendar yet. And so rather than budgeting those, we didn't do that. But with that example, any events that we do hold will be a separate budget that will then be incorporated. Once we know what we're planning and when, we would incorporate it in and change the budget. Also, if something were to come up, another opportunity that the museum saw fit to take part of, that would be another separate budget, which would be layered over and above what we just discussed. And that's it. So up next is Doug Muir, our clerk, to talk about the election of the 2022 slate of officers.
Thank you, Mike. Before we get into that, I want to thank you, Mike, for your dedication during your service. You've served 2 terms, 2 3-year terms on the board of directors, and in addition, have taken on the treasurer role from Tim Felter, and you've done a great job. And Mike, I think, alluded to a couple of the things that I want to comment on. One is the fact that he's been very flexible in the way he's gone about budgeting and looking at our financials. He mentioned the critical spend budget, which we needed to move into during the hard economic times of COVID, and then suggested we move away from that as economic conditions changed and our fortunes changed. So he's been very flexible and very creative in the way he's gone about it. So thank you, Mike. You've done a terrific job, and we'll miss you.
Thank you.
Now the election of new directors. Can we have the next slide, please? I'm not going to comment at length on the bios of these folks, but I want to thank our nominating committee and headed by Paul Swindlehurst for bringing us a really super list of board candidates. These are wonderful people, and I encourage you, if you haven't seen the bios, to go to the museum website and take a look. There's a fairly extensive write-up on each. Jen Bogard, faculty of Lesley University. Susan Finneran, founding partner and CEO of law firm Finneran and Nicholson here in Newburyport. Mary Lean, former associate director of the MIT Museum. Seem to have a real MIT connection here. Charlie Tontar, in addition to his recent role as city councilor, Charlie is probably our resident intellectual as a professor as a college professor. And Mark Werner, director of sales at Gorton Seafood. A couple of generalizations I want to make. All of these folks have a deep and abiding interest in history and in the museum world and in Newburyport. 3 critical elements to being a successful board member and helping us advance our efforts. In addition, I'm going to request a motion to re-elect Jack Santos, who served a 3-year term as director, and Tom Strickler, who's also served a 3-year term. Our bylaws allow directors to serve for 2 3-year terms, and Jack and Tom have graciously agreed to continue on for 3 more years. So that is our slate of recommended director candidates. And unless there's any objection, what I'd like to do is I'd like to request a motion to elect the entire slate, the 5 new members, and re-elect the 2 existing members as Newburyport Maritime Society directors. If you
I would
look
move,
at,
I would move that we elect the slate as presented this evening.
thank you, Paul. Is
I
there a
second that.
I hear a second. Now, in terms of the voting, this is going to be interesting. If you look at your taskbar, you'll see a block called reactions. And, 2 of the reactions we're going to use. One is a green check mark. That means you approve. And a red X, which means you disapprove. So at this point, I'd like to ask all of you, all of the members who are here in attendance, to select one of these choices and hopefully vote the slate of directors. Let's see, can we do a count, Jack, or some kind of a check here?
Yeah, we're checking, we are checking the membership, and so far it's unanimous approval.
Thank you, Jack. Then I think the minutes for the meeting will reflect that the slate of directors has been unanimously approved. I'd like to ask all the directors, the new directors and the existing directors, to stay on for a few minutes after the close of this annual meeting. We'll have a very, very, very short board of directors meeting, the sole purpose of which is to elect officers. Should be no more than 5 or 10 minutes. So with that request, I believe my work here is done, and I'll turn the program over to Jack.
Great, thanks, Doug. That was well done for an electronic voting of directors. I have not seen it done better. So congratulations on doing that. And I'm honored. I guess I'm the presumptive nominee for the incoming chair. That business will be taken care of amongst the board after this meeting. But given that I put some remarks together about the museum to 2022 and beyond, I thought it'd be appropriate. You know, it's a household tradition that somebody is at the lead of this esteemed organization. Abraham Wheelwright, who built my house in 1789, was the longest served officer of the Newburyport Maritime Marine Society. And if you had been to my talk, you would know that. And now here I am and humbly leading the Newburyport Maritime Society. The Marine Society was chartered in 1772, the Maritime Society in 1968. And here we are, 2022, 250 years after the Marine Society started, 54 years after the Maritime Society was formed. And we're looking towards the future as the board, because in 2028, it'll be the 60th anniversary of the Maritime Society. And in 2072, will be the 300th anniversary of the Marine Society. The two, arguably, the Maritime Society is a successor of the Marine Society. And we think about the future of this organization because we're right in the midst of a strategic planning process here at the Custom House Maritime Museum. And I can't tell you all the details since it hasn't been approved as of yet, but I can give you a broad brush description of where we are, and you'll get an idea of where we're going to be spending our time, assuming it does get all approved over the next few years. In true maritime fashion, we've talked about our strategic plan in maritime terms: three masts of a ship. And those three masts of our strategy include stewardship, education, and community. By stewardship, we mean our stewardship of the building, which we only recently in the last few years, especially given the 250-year history of the Marine Society. So it's been very recent that we've been responsible for the Custom House and taking it over from the Newburyport Redevelopment Authority. And our stewardship of the collection, as well as our stewardship of finances. We want to maintain the building. We're spending a significant amount of time on it, not only to protect it from the rising floodwaters, because we are next to the water, next to the harbor, but also to eventually get our museum capable to, through climate control, to house even more important objects. That's stewardship. Education is that second mast. And that's an area that's been pretty disrupted by COVID, not only here at the Custom House Maritime Museum, but also amongst many schools. But we're back, and we're planning to make a dent in education in the greater Newburyport area in a big way. We've already had the superintendent of schools visit us and provide us some words of wisdom. He's had his staff engaged in the last few weeks in terms of what we can do to help Newburyport schools in particular with education, maritime education. And we are looking at more collaboration with teachers and educator involvement in programs that will develop for schools as well as within the museum for students, docents, and the public. So it doesn't stop at the schools, it also goes to the public. And even more recently, just this week, I've been contacted by some local senior housing groups that would like the Maritime Museum to provide some programs for them. And finally, the third mast is the community mast. And many of us think that's kind of the one of the most important ones, because we're known for the maritime tree, which has happened in the last couple of years. We're known for Maritime Days. We're known to be a community gathering spot that is for greater Newburyport residents, including underserved populations, which we'll make an attempt at addressing even better than we have. And we're known to be a draw to the city. We're more than just shopping, restaurants, and old buildings. We want Newburyport to be known for its museums, and in particular, the Custom House Maritime Museum. But did you notice there's something missing on these masts? And I think it's probably the most important part of being a museum in the modern age. And that's what's missing, is the people that make the museum successful. We would be nothing without the people that have conceived having a Custom House Maritime Museum, that made it happen, that kept it alive. In fact, we just recently came across this document in our archives. It's from 1972. It reflects a lot of the folks that back then were involved in managing and leading the Custom House Maritime Museum. You know, for you old timers and townies, you'll recognize a lot of the names: Peter Kelly, Josiah Welsh, Chris Snow, John P. Marquand, Bill Plant, many of which are not with us today, and H. Patterson Hale Jr., whose trust continues to make a significant contribution to the museum today. They're the sponsors for our exhibit, Legendary Newburyporters, along with Newburyport Bank as presenting sponsor. So the people make Legendary Newburyporters, and you've already heard a little bit about that. I hope you'll come to see the exhibit. It's fantastic, and we're really excited about it. Real legendary Newburyporters give their time, their talent, and their treasure to the greater Newburyport area. And as an amateur historian, I know our community has a tradition of giving time, talent, and treasure. I'll just give a couple of historical examples. John T. Brown died in 1901. He was a Western Union manager in town when Western Union mattered. But and he gave us the Five Roads Fountains. That's that fountain just across from Atkinson Common off of High Street. He gave us the Ellen Brown Chapel at the Oak Hill Cemetery. He was involved in almost every steeple clock in churches here in town, and he also paid for the Parker Street entrance for Oak Hill Cemetery. William Swayze died in 1915. He was a grocer, ended up as Towel's treasurer. He was significant in getting us the Atkinson Common tablets on Atkinson Common. He paid for the Garrison statue in Brown Square, and he bought a federal home in Market Street for the YWCA in honor of his 5-year-old daughter. And if you go into that building today on Market Street, you'll see the family portrait, including a portrait of the young daughter who had passed away at 5. We don't have to go back 100 years to find legendary Newburyporters. There's a lot of unsung legendary Newburyporters we have here today that are impacting the Custom House Museum. And in honor of St. Patty's Day, I know we're all waiting for our green bear after this meeting. I have to mention Irish Dan Healy. In the vestibule at the entrance at the Custom House is a picture of Irish Dan on the Flying Cloud 1966 Yankee homecoming. He was a great supporter of maritime activities in the Newburyport area, a member of the Custom House Maritime Museum, and 2 generations later continues to impact the museum. His descendants, his grandson, Dan Healy III, has been a great supporter during the year, and just today, in the headlines of the paper of the Newburyport News, donated the recently found mammoth tooth, gave it to us, has given it to the museum, and hopes that, and we will continue the tradition with that tooth of any monies collected will go to the situation in the Ukraine. In fact, we had Dan in the museum just yesterday for that for the news, and you can see them right there. Dan speaking to Jared Sadowski. Jared does our IT work for us on contract, and his wife Nadia, who is from the Ukraine and has established the fund that is giving back to her hometown in Ukraine, with Susan, our board chair, looking on as they talk. It was really an emotional moment, because Dan announced that every dollar given towards for people that are visiting the tooth, every dollar given towards the Ukrainian relief effort, he will match up to $100,000. A few other unsung legendary Newburyporters include Bill Harris, who we spoke about last year. He had died about this time last year. And without Bill, we would not have the waste to the water. And you should know that the Custom House Maritime Museum is working on an appropriate memorial on the waterfront with the Waterfront Trust, a memorial to Bill. Mike Welsh, a West Newbury resident who's had some health challenges recently. He's a reenactor. I'm sure you've seen him. He's led some of our education programs, a First Friday lecturer. Without people like Mike, we would not be as successful of a museum as we have been. Jeanette Isabella, who's already been mentioned, with her fund for painting restoration, the Montana, currently being restored. And the people that, if you walk into the museum today, you're sure to bump into them, because they're there almost every day, helping out as docents, helping around the office. Lloyd Sanborn, who was a prior board member, currently a docent, and docents Emily Hoffman, Donna Sylvester, Don Roberts. Say hi to them when you come in. It's people like that that are giving their time that make the Custom House Museum the gem it is within our city. Now, I can't not end this talk without talking about 3 key people over the last couple of years. Yes, Joan's going to be leaving us, and it's been an incredible time, especially during this COVID period. Joan was able to keep the museum open pretty much on its regular hours and through the winter, adhering to a fairly normal schedule. And she has touched practically every room in the museum. We had gotten a reputation of being kind of staid and unchanging, and people kind of say, well, I was there 5-6 years ago, and it's still the same. It ain't the same anymore. This is not your parents' old Custom House Museum. If you haven't been in, you have to see what the rooms look like. They've been freshly painted. The exhibits have been moved around, and new exhibits have been pulled out in every room. And we got a 2-for-1 deal. I have to mention Scott Whitlow, who came with Joan, has spent almost as much time and has become the handyman of our museum. Thank you, Scott. We hope Joan will stay in some capacity helping out. I'm sure, she's become one of the family. Thank you, Joan. Susan Bernhard, she's not leaving the board. She'll still be around, but she was the chairperson over the last few years. No small job, pretty much a full-time job. And it was Susan that thought up the maritime tree. I gotta admit, she's a time stopper, infectious enthusiasm and energy, and gets things done. You look at the clock and say, wow, did all that time just go by? Yes, that's Susan, the Susan Time Stopper Bernhard. She'll stay on the board. She'll probably get involved in some of our development activities. Thank you, Susan. And then there's Mike Loreno. Doug has already said a few words about Mike, his adeptness with finances, his stewardship of the endowment. And I think we've got a special gift for Mike that we want to share with you. Mike will be getting a Marine Society certificate, especially made out to him. They haven't given these out in a long time. And we have it here framed, ready to deliver to Mike. Well, we don't have that version of Zoom yet where you can push something through the screen and have it come out the other side. So we'll have to drop it off at his house. But yes, it's a Marine Society certificate given to captains or captains of industry. And thank you, Mike Loreno, for your
Hmm.
time and your commitment to the Custom House Maritime Museum as you roll
Isn't
off
that nice?
the role on the board and as head of as leading the finance area here at the museum.
Thank you.
So I've gone through my list of legendary Newburyporters, but I just want to point out that everybody on this call in this meeting can be a legendary Newburyporter, and we need your help. I'll need your help over the next couple of years, your talents, your time, yes, even your donations. If we want to keep the Maritime Museum the gem that it is, one of only 3 in the country, designed by that same architect that designed the Washington Monument, U.S. Treasury, Robert Mills. So I may be stepping up as chairperson of this board of directors, but this is a call for you to step up and step up your commitment to the Newburyport Maritime Society, doing business as the Custom House Maritime Museum. The board, especially our new board members, can't do it alone. And you can make your own mark as a legendary Newburyporter on the programs committee, in the education committee, on the collections committee, with the maritime tree in particular. Boy, you can't believe the amount of effort it takes to pull that baby off. And with Maritime Days, which we still hope to have in one form or another. And we're continuing to look for and try to get a tall ship into our difficult harbor. But so be a legend and help us out. There's some simple ways to be a legend here at the Custom House Maritime Museum. You can donate. And it's as simple as going to donate.thechmm.org, or, and here's a new challenge, invite 3 friends to be members. Bring them the first Friday. And if you want to do that tonight, get them this, just type in be a member .thechmm.org. And you can do it right away, enter in a credit card, and help us help you bring this classic museum to Newburyport. So why are we doing this? What is it that makes this so special that we continue to plan for the museum's future and make this a museum that tourists as well as locals love? Well, if this will work, oh, sorry, that's the membership. I accidentally clicked on memberships, like I'm already a member. We're here to celebrate our maritime history. That, I think, we can all agree. But we're also here to invest in our community's future. We're much more than a museum. We're a place that is a centerpiece for the greater Newburyport area. So let's invest in our community's future. I hope you'll join me as a member, as a volunteer, as a contributor. I hope you'll invest for the future. And I love what the poet Amanda Gorman, you remember Amanda, she was the young lady at the presidential inauguration, said, "For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us." So let's take the museum through 2022 and beyond. So we're at the end of our program. And what I'd like to do is open up the house to questions, comments. If anybody has any questions or comments, I haven't seen anything in the chat come up. I think you can all unmute yourselves and start your video. Such a difference since the beginning of the pandemic, where people couldn't behave themselves on Zoom. And now we just went through a whole meeting with video on and ability to unmute, and it actually went pretty well.
Jack, can you undo the screen, the presentation slides,
I can.
so we can see everyone? Thank you.
Any comments, thoughts, questions?
Great job, Jack.
Okay, thanks.
Well done. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Hope that was helpful and good information for you that tells you where we've been, where we're going. And that concludes our annual meeting for the Custom House Maritime Museum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
everybody.
Thank you, Jack.